Macy, a mother lioness, sleeps as her 4 cubs suckled. Not too far away from them, a giant scorpion made its way towards the lion family and stung Macy. A few days later, Macy fell sick and swelled with the poison from the scorpion's sting. She died soon after. Afterwards, the 4 cubs roamed around the forest. One after the other, 3 of them became food for wild animals except for Kubi, who remained alive. Kubi wandered about until he slumped by the entrance of a village. The domestic animals fled when they saw the cub. They are usually attacked by a pack of hungry wild lionesses from the forest. This made them build hideouts where they escaped into once the lionesses arrived. Hearing no roars, they moved into the village grounds. "It is a young lion." They stared at the cub. "Is he dead?" asked Sarid the cow. "He is not dead. I think he fainted." Just then, Kubi opened his eyes. "Where am I?" he asked. "Who are you? And where do you come from?" asked Tamu the pig. "I am Kubi. My mother died from the sting of a scorpion. I am the only one alive after my other siblings became food for other carnivorous animals in the forest." "What do you want to do now?" asked Tamu. Sadly, Kubi bowed his head. "I don't know. Perhaps you all will be gracious enough to allow me stay for a day, after which I will continue with my journey." The animals appeared uncomfortable with Kubi's request. "Isn't it dangerous for us to allow a cub into our home?" asked Koku. "But he is only a cub. I don't see any danger in helping out someone in need," said Toto the goat. "I support Koku. A lion is a flesh-eating animal, and even a helpless and weary-looking cub will become a lion in no time," replied Sarid the cow. "We should allow him to live with us. Perhaps he will protect us from the attacks from the lionesses," said Tamu. "What if he turns around to tearing our flesh and licking our blood once he is grown?" asked Sarid. All the animals became quiet as they considered Sarid's question. "What if he helps us against the wild animals?" said Zeta the cock. "Are we taking him in?" asked Koku. "Yes!" they chorused. They turned to face Kubi. "You can stay with us as long as you want," Sarid the spokesman announced. Relieved, Kubi smiled and took a bow. "Thank you all for taking in a helpless stranger among you." Over time, Kubi grew bigger. His purrs became louder, teeth long and sharp enough to tear flesh and break bones. His muscles rippled as he walked. He soon forgot who he was. He forgot that he belonged to the ruling animal species and began to speak, think, and act like the lower animals. He joined in their petty fights and sometimes gets kicked about by Sarid and the rest of the pack. What a pity! Animals that should run at his presence, or rather, become his meal, laugh at him for being a weak lion. Kubi also learned to run into hiding when the lionesses and other wild animals attacked the village. The animals began to make fun of him, calling him a stupid, powerless lion who cannot roar or bite. He would shrug his shoulders whenever they made fun of him, helpless to stop their cruel jokes. Kubi caught a fish, and as he walked home, he held the fish by his teeth and hummed a tune to himself. However, Sarid the cow was hiding by a bush waiting for Kubi to show up with his prized catch. Suddenly, Kubi heard a frightening noise as Sarid pounced and snatched the fish from. "The fish is mine! It is mine!" Kubi cried as he ran after Sarid into the village. And so, Sarid cheated him of his catch, as he always did. "Fish is not for your kind. Go and learn to hunt for fresh meat dripping with blood like other carnivorous animals like you," Sarid shouted back as he ran awkwardly away from Kubi. Kubi overtook him easily, but he drew back in fear as Sarid yelped in defense. He feared Sarid's big size, being unaware of the strength of his purrs, his bone-breaking and flesh-tearing teeth, and strong muscles of his arms and legs. Dejected, he crawled into his hut and grieved the loss of his meal. While at it, Zeta the squirrel walked in and began to laugh. "What is funny?" asked a sad and frustrated Kubi. Your ancestors will be ashamed of you. You looked funny, running after Sarid, a mere cow that is supposed to tremble with fear at the sound of your roar. Explain what exactly you mean or get out of my presence, Kubi growled. Keep quiet. That is all you do. Make empty growls and sleep all day when you should be out in the jungle hunting for food like the rest of your kind, and take your position as a prince of the animal kingdom. That appeared to get Kubi's attention as he rose to his feet and began to pace about the hut. There you go again. Sarid says that all the time. And what is that about me being a prince of the animal kingdom? Zeta sighed. What a pity. You have lost your identity. You have forgotten the son of who you are. But I will help you. All I want is my fish, and I don't remember asking for help from you. What ignorant prince! Have you at any time seen your reflection? Asked Zeta. What is the point? Aren't we all alike? No, we are not. Come, we have to do something about that. How? Get introduced to your real self. Perhaps you will start to act appropriately like the rest of your species, said Zeta. My belly rumbles with hunger, Kubi growled. If you understand this truth, you can have all the food you want without anyone fighting you over it. Kubi glowed with excitement. Oh yeah, keep talking. What do I do now? Have you ever taken time to take a sneak peek at some of the animals that come to attack us? Why would I do that? You want me killed? Zeta shook his head sadly. You know I feel bad. You don't even know who you are. You don't remember anything? Remember what? Don't you remember how your mama used to hunt for food and bring back the flesh of animals for you, dripping with fresh blood? I remember nothing, and that was long ago. You are a lion, one of the princes of the jungle. You have in you what it takes to roar, and all the animals in the jungle will tremble and go into hiding. Including Sarid? Kubi stared at Zeta in amazement. Sarid! Sarid is just a piece of meat for you when you recognize who you are and learn to use your purrs, claws, muscles, and teeth. I am a lion, a prince of the jungle, Kubi repeated with awe. When next the village is attacked, look at the pack of lions. You will see that you are much bigger and stronger than them. Really? Kubi stared at Zeta in wonder. Yes, you can do so much more once you come to terms with who you are and become aware of your abilities. Thanks, Zeta. I appreciate this. Promise me that when you finally come to the full grasp of your powers, you will not eat me up as food. I promise. You have always had my back, Zeta, and I will never pay you evil for good. All right then. We have a deal. I will see you later. A few weeks after, a pack of lionesses entered into the village to hunt for food. As the animals fled into their hideout, Kubi lingered and hid behind a rock where he got a good look at the lionesses. He watched helplessly as they caught some of the cocks and ate them up. Alone in his room, he began to practice his roar. He was at it when Zeta walked in. I feel so helpless. My roar is weak. I will never be like those lionesses, Kubi cried. Nothing great ever gets done by those who become easily discouraged. Do you know how long those wild lionesses have been roaring and hunting until they became perfect? Kubi sniffed back tears. Keep practicing your roars. It will be better if you go out into the forest to practice your hunting skills. The forest? What if I am attacked one of the wild animals? If you do, just remember, you are a lion, a prince of the jungle, and confidently roar with all the energy within you, Zeta replied. All right, but can you come with me on my first trip? All right, I will go with you. Wow, what if we start tomorrow? Kubi asked excitedly. Tomorrow is a deal, replied Zeta. For the next few days, Kubi went out, accompanied by Zita, to practice his roars and hunting skills. He killed and ate up a number of rabbits, rodents, and other lesser animals as his confidence grew. "I am thirsty! I need a drink!" Kubi shouted. "A river is close by," replied Zita. They walked towards the running stream. Kubi went down on his forelimbs to lap some water. He had lapped a few times when he suddenly stopped and stared into the stream. On the clear stream is an image of a huge and fierce lion staring back at him. Kubi stood by the riverside staring for a while until Zita called out, "Are you all right? We should be on our way home before dusk falls upon us." Kubi was quiet as they walked home. The image at the river definitely made an impression on him. He finally understood what Zita had been saying all along. "I am bigger than any of the pack of wild lionesses which attacked the village," he thought. As they walked, suddenly a tiger came out from the woods and growled at them, his attention on Zita. Terrified, Zita clung to Kubi and shouted, "Help me, Kubi! Please help!" Kubi felt a jolt of fear and stood on a spot, confused on what to do. But when the tiger pounced on Zita, he became angry and for the first time felt an instinct to kill. At that moment, he forgot his fear and stood on his hind legs. His mouth opened wide, and for the first time, a deep, loud, and frightful roar came out of his mouth. Zita forgot the tiger for a moment, turned to look at Kubi and at his sight. Her eyes enlarged with shocked amazement, and then she began to smile in admiration and pride. The tiger froze at the sight of Kubi and the deafening loudness of the roar. The tiger shrieked, clawed at Kubi's face, and fled into the woods. There was a moment of silence as the two friends stared at each other. "You did it! You did it, boy! I knew you would!" Zita exclaimed, pure joy on her face. "You did it, Zita! Thank you for helping me to discover who I am. But for you, I would have died a weakling. I am glad to see that you have come into your own. Now you can confront any other wild animal and act like a true prince of the jungle." It felt so good roaring and dipping my claws into the tiger's flesh. It felt so right to tear his flesh and break its bones. Too bad he escaped. Don't worry, there will be more opportunities to tear more flesh and break more bones. Zita smiled. Like Sarid's. I can't wait to tear some part of her robust flesh. Kubi laughed. Number, you can't attack any of the animals in the village. I know that Sarid has been very cruel to you, but you cannot attack her. All right, it is a deal. For what you have done for me, anything you say is a deal. You are indeed a great and reliable friend, and I would never have been able to do this without you. That is all right. Let us be on our way. Otherwise, we might miss the way if darkness falls upon us. Life went on normal in the domestic animals village, no one noticing the change in Kubi. But a few have observed him and Zita's frequent trips into the forest every morning, and this became the main topic of discussion during the monthly meetings. "I wonder what those two are up to, creeping out of the village in the morning and strolling in at dusk," said Toto the goat. "Aimless walk in the woods, what else?" Sarid yawned. "I don't think so. Don't you all notice that they don't show up for dinner these days?" asked Tita the cock. "That reminds me, I seemed to hear Kubi munching something late at night. It sounded like he was chewing meat," said Koku the dog. "Kubi? Chewing meat? You must be imagining things. Where would he get it? I doubt if he would recognize meat if he sees one." Sarid laughed out loud. "I think you are underestimating Kubi more than necessary. He is just a lion who forgot his identity. What if he has finally discovered who he is?" Tamu the pig added. Each of them felt a jolt of fear as they considered Tamu's words. If Kubi has found his identity, then we are no longer safe with him here with us. One after the other, we will become food for him, Tita said, trembling with fear. "Can you stop all these talks of Kubi finding himself and all that stuff? How would he find himself? For heaven's sake, he has never hunted or roared all his life. Who will teach him?" asked Sarid, frightened and upset at the direction of the conversation. They all stared at Sarid in hope, fear hidden within the corner of their eyes. "Well, Sarid," Tita said, a playful glint in her eyes, "let's hope you're right. Otherwise, those claws might just find their way to you first. A little payback for your past behavior." She chuckled at Sarid's fearful expression. It didn't take long for the questions on the minds of the domestic animals to be answered, as the village was visited by the lionesses that usually attack them. As all the animals took to their heels, Kubi stood at the village center and faced the lionesses. They roared, and he roared back. They bared their fangs, and he bared his. Then he stood on his forelimbs and roared with all his might. The lionesses stared at him in awe and sat on their behind. Then the lead lioness roared gently and turned to go, the others dutifully following behind. From their hidden spots, the domestic animals watched the entire scene with shock, fear, and amazement. Cautiously, they began to crawl out of their holes and come to stand several feet away from Kubi. Suddenly, Zita jumped forward, took a bow, and announced, "Allow me to introduce to you the Prince of the Jungle." A shivering Sarid came forward and fell on his forelimbs, crying, "Please, I apologize for the way I have treated you all the while. Please, forgive me." Kubi walked over to Sarid and made to sink his teeth on her face. The frightened animal shivered as she expected the fangs to cut into her neck. Everyone quieted, held their breath, waiting for Kubi to revenge and tear apart the helpless animal. But he turned and walked back to his hut, wagging his tail. Sarid sighed with relief as others still remained in their positions staring after Kubi. Tamu threw a look of, "I told you so" at the other animals as they began to file back to their daily chores. Life in the community did not remain the same afterwards, especially for Kubi. He would wake up most mornings to find delicacies placed by his doorstep. Fearing for their lives, the animals bribed him with food, bowing and curtsying whenever he passed. Tired of the hero worship and desiring to live the proper life of a lion, Kubi escaped into the forest to hunt. Many times, he would return with mouth dripping with blood, dragging his dead prey into the hut. Koku would lick his lips as he sniffed fresh blood, and sounds of bone cracking and flesh-tearing filters into his ears. He sometimes got lucky when Kubi left remnants, which he gobbled with pleasure. Kubi was asleep in the hut when familiar sounds filtered into his ears. His earlobes tweaked as the sounds continued. He snapped out of sleep and wandered outside his hut. He walked to the edge of the village and was surprised to find the lionesses there, roaring softly as if calling to him. He watched and observed them until the mother lioness moved towards him and nudged his neck with her head. Then she turned and ran out of the village, and the other lionesses ran after her. They stopped when Kubi didn't follow, and they turned back and went, "Oh, whoa!" softly. Kubi took a few wobbly steps towards them, then stopped and turned back to see his old friends who stood there watching the scenario. Zita ran and gave him a big hug. "They await you, Kubi. You belong to your own kind. I've sensed your growing restlessness. You must go. I will miss you, Zita, and will never forget you. You remain my best friend forever," said Kubi as he returned the hug. Kubi cast a final glance at the remaining animals before turning to join the waiting pride. The animals watched the lionesses stride majestically away until they eventually disappeared from view. With Kubi as prince, the animals were safe from the lionesses' attacks. What did you learn from this story? Here are a few ideas, but if you think about it some more, you might find even more lessons hidden in the story. 1. Every child is born and gifted with natural talents, skills, and abilities. What do you enjoy doing? What can you do effortlessly? What are you never tired of doing? What would you still do even if you don't get paid for it? If you can get the correct answer to all these, then there lies your gift. 2. Your natural talents and gifts can be developed and built upon for you to become skilled. A talent should not be left fallow without being cultivated. It must be nurtured through practice. The more you practice, the better you become. 3. Every human being is created special and uniquely different from the others. So learn to love and take delight in yourself. Never underestimate your worth and value, irrespective of where you find yourself. Never think low of yourself, because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. 4. Build on good friendships. Identify those who encourage and support you among your friends and build on those relationships. 5. Irrespective of where you find yourself, do not forget your identity, values, and great character because of peer pressure or in order to be accepted into a fold. In other words, do not blend in with the wrong crowd who does not care for what you believe in. Always remember that everybody cannot be your friend. 6. Help someone whenever you have the opportunity to. You might also need their help someday. 7. Integrity is sticking to your word whenever you make a promise. Kubi had all the reasons to revenge on Sarid for his bad behavior in the past. But he already promised Zita not to hurt any of the domestic animals, and he kept to his word. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more amazing stories like this one. Kubi's adventures continue in the second edition. Are you curious about what happens after he leaves with the lionesses to live in the jungle as king of the animals? Stay tuned for Chapter 2 of Kubi, the Lion Prince series titled The Adventure of Kubi in the Jungle.